Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, Principal Atmospheric Scientist with Nutrient Ag Solutions, and I want to thank you for watching this weekly Ag Weather Update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. As we begin today's video, and I do have some extra content for you today at the beginning on the long-range forecast, I want to remind you that when we do these seasonal forecasts, that the model predictions and their skill are basically a function of two things. And the first is the initial conditions. Okay, in other words, what was the model started with? And one of those big things is soil moisture. And as a result, we can look at the drought monitor to get an idea about that. And currently, through the April 8th update, which was the one we got last week, we can see here that better than 60% of the country is still in drought. Yes, we have seen improvement in the central plains of the United States. But when you come out here to the Great Basin, you come here to the northern plains of the United States and even parts of southern Texas, getting over to New Mexico, we've not seen much improvement. And despite some great rain over the weekend, there's still more that needs to be done in this region of the country as well, around the Great Lakes Basin. I can even give you a number on this, actually two numbers. North Dakota is having its driest 6-month time period in the last 125 years. And California had its driest wet season in the last 40 years. Now, I talk about all that because it will ultimately affect the pattern, and therefore it's going to affect what happens in North Carolina. And this is, one of the two things that's most important about understanding long-range prediction. The second thing has to do with the only variable that actually shows statistical significant predictive skill, and it's ocean temperatures. And what I want you to take note of, and we've talked about this lately, is that this region right in through here, off the Baja of California, getting into the Gulf of Alaska, has been cool for spring, and it continues to stay cool. It's a part of that negative Pacific meridional mode, which we continue to discuss. La Nina is fading. Okay, and the trade winds are no longer responding like they would when there's a La Nina. So La Nina is not going to be the main factor going forward. In fact, we expect INSO-neutral conditions, that means neither El Nino or La Nina, through our late spring, summer, and even early fall. There is a warm nose of water here, and there's also quite a bit of warm water still in the North Atlantic. That's a part of what we call the Atlantic meridional mode. But given this as the backdrop, what are we getting out of the forecast? So here we go. Let's take a look at temperatures first. These are just raw output. This is just raw output from the European model. Let's add some interpretation. May temperature anomalies. We're expecting to see above average temperatures that stretch through parts of the high plains in the Great Basin. A lot of this is due to the dry weather there. More of the sun's energy in May will go into heating up the ground. When you get to the east of here, though, we see that over in the Carolinas, we're expecting more normal temperatures. How about as we transition into June? Again, we see most of the heat tucked away here in the central plains of the United States, getting back into the Intermountain West. And from June into the month of July, an interesting thing begins to happen. You can see here how the eastern half of the country, eastern third, is really favoring near normal midsummer temperatures, while the models continue to put the warmest conditions from the plains into the northern plains and back into the Pacific Northwest as we work our way into summer. We put that all into aggregate. This is what we get. This is the May, June, July. In fact, let's go another month farther. This is the June, July, August. So we notice that the models, in terms of difference from normal, are keeping the greatest heat here in the midsection of the country. Now, we're going to explain why in just a few moments. But let's see what that means in terms of precipitation next. So, over that same time period, let's go back to the monthly anomalies, and let's just get back here to the month of May. You see that throughout much of the East Coast, the Mid-Atlantic, and the Carolinas, we're expecting near normal May precipitation. But if I could make an alteration to this, I would tell you that if you're in this area, it kind of looks like a weird looking D there. I do expect a lot of thunderstorm activity to continue. That is the thunderstorm symbol there. So I do not expect us to go into any time period, extended time period, through the month of May where we are going to see I'm talking like 15 to 20 days of drier weather. From May, though, let's get into June. June, we see a lot of, I think, what would be normal early season thunderstorm activity here. And then as we get into July and August, I want to talk to you in a few moments about what I'm concerned about with respect to the early start to this next hurricane season. But as we just did, let's put it all together and look at the whole of June, July, and August precipitation anomalies. We see wetter conditions overall in the models, and yes, this has a lot to do with tropical cyclone activity, which we need to be discussing here in a few moments. Now, during that same time period, why don't we step this out and look global? And let's flip this over to look at some ocean temperatures, okay? One of the most important things that I've noticed is that the Atlantic maintains a warm bias in the models. They've now brought the temperatures that are here in that what we call that negative Pacific meridional mode. That's the cooler water off the coast here. They've allowed those to extend farther into summer, but there's still a large warm nose of air that's pushing toward the west coast of the United States. Now, why I'm concerned about this is because if I go from ocean temperatures to now looking at surface pressure anomalies, this might be the most important map to look at today. So here is our normal subtropical high over the Atlantic, and here's the one over the Pacific. All right. Now, what's so important about this is that the shading, as you can see here, on the western side of the Bermuda high, which is this one here, is right now forecast to be above average. Now, why this is critical is because with the cooler ocean temperatures and the fading La Nina in the Pacific, we do not expect high wind shear values over the Atlantic. And if the pressures are higher, closer to the East Coast, this could send would-be tropical systems closer to the East Coast. And as a result of already having an elevated risk of hurricanes this year, well, I'm going to echo what has come out here from the Colorado State University group, where they're calling for this year to have 17 named storms, average is 12, and 150 accumulated cyclone energy, we'll just call it units there. Normal is 106. So we're expecting a very active tropical cyclone season. In review, the heat seems to be to your west. The driest conditions seem to be to your west, in the Midwest, in the plains. And that's where our risk due to those ocean temperature patterns are greatest. What these models are incapable of doing is forecasting any particular storm system or hurricane or understanding convection or thunderstorm patterns. They are not able to do that. But I want to add to this discussion by showing you the latest updates from what's called the National Multi-Model Ensemble. It's actually a group of models run in North America. There's 7 of them here. We put them together to give you, an ensemble average. And as you notice here, much of, North America is forecast to see above average temperatures for this June, July, and August. What about precipitation? Well, we can now go do the same thing. And once again, we see that along the Gulf Coast and East Coast, above average precipitation, that is the hurricane risk that I'm concerned about, with the driest conditions potentially being stretched into this area. It's long range, it's speculative, it's based upon just a few variables and what it was initialized with, which you all know was a lot of drought. And just as a consequence, as we look at this, we need to just take it with a grain of salt and watch it carefully on the near-term timescales, okay? So with that kind of as our backdrop, let's go take a look here. Let's shrink this up a little bit. That was a little too large there. Let's take a look at what we've had as of late in terms of our jet stream pattern. So this is what we've seen. Strong winds coming in through here. And that is what has given us from parts of the Mid-South and the South over to the Carolinas from March into early April, more frequent thunderstorm activity. But why I want to show you this is if you just look right into this area, and this is important for your long range, that's an area where the jet stream level winds have really missed. And as a consequence, look at the total precipitation ranks by climate district from March 1st through April 12th. Let's look big picture first. From the west coast to the northern plains, extremely dry. We've taken a look at those statistics. The northeast is quite dry as well. We've been very wet from the central plains to the upper Midwest. In parts of the mid-south, a lot of severe weather. But take a look at some of the numbers over here in the Carolinas. Some places in South Carolina and coastal North Carolina have actually been drier than normal over that time period. Again, it's about 45 days that we're looking at here. It's just important to analyze this as we go into our forecast time period here. Soil moisture. It's not something we're struggling with, though, over in the Carolinas, nor are we in the Mid-South through much of the Cotton Belt, except when you get over here to parts of Texas and Oklahoma. Driest by far is the northern plains, but notice the northeast is as well. And for you corn and soybean farmers in North Carolina, this past weekend we saw a return of a lot of moisture into the heart of the corn and soybean belt. In fact, I can show it to you here by looking at the last 7 days of total accumulated precipitation. Severe storms to the south, and they ripped out of the Red River Valley of the South all the way down to southern Florida. over 500 reports of severe weather over this past weekend, really Friday and Saturday getting into Sunday. In fact, just to show you these, take a look. Let me blow this up so it's a little bit easier to see here. You can see that just on the 9th, getting into early morning on the 10th, that would be Friday into Saturday, this area saw over 400 reports of severe weather. We had it too right here along our northern border. Those are all reports of hail. Right now there are some stronger winds. So it was a stormy end of last week before we got into the weekend. Okay, where are we going with this pattern? Well, this is something I missed, and I missed it badly, I'll be honest with you. As I work my way through the forecast of the trough ridge pattern into Wednesday, and then eventually into Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, what I missed was this. The atmosphere is attempting to set up a block over Alaska with a trough to its south, and the flow has to go around it like that, which pulls a huge ridge into the west. That allows for much cooler air to come into the central United States, and it will eventually make its way over toward the East Coast. And I'll be honest, if you watch my video from last week, I didn't think we could connect to some cold air. So this is going to impact the Midwest in a big way. And as a consequence, corn and soybean farmers in the Carolinas know that this is going to slow us down in a major way from getting a lot of planting progress done. And that cooler air will slide over to your region, and we're going to take a look at when it will get there in just a few moments. But all hazards weather map, we don't have a lot to be discussing early this week. All the action's up north where there's this big stacked low sitting and spinning here, and that's actually bringing in some snow into parts of the Dakotas. Let me show what I'm talking about. Latest high resolution run. This gets us into the early morning hours. Here we are. This is through the day today, Monday into Monday night. You can see while we could get some showers in parts of the mid-Atlantic, so up in here and pushing into Virginia, we're not going to see much of that down here in the Carolinas. But look at the snow in North Dakota. Now, while they don't want this because it's unpleasant, it is desperately needed to return the moisture to that area. When do we see precip? Well, this is getting through the day on Tuesday. We could get some late evening scattered showers that move through us here on Tuesday evening. But then overall, it's not too much. When we might start to see our best chances of precip could be toward the end of the week. This is a stalled out frontal boundary that's just slowly moving our way. So let's just take a look. This is through the next 60 hours. You notice we're not talking about much precipitation at all through Wednesday afternoon. That's your snapshot through Wednesday afternoon. Real quick, what's going on with the winds? We could get some gustier winds Tuesday into Wednesday here. Maybe sometimes gusting here 25 to 30 miles an hour, but the strongest winds are in the middle part of the United States. So I just want to give you a quick wind update there as well. Severe weather. Today, it's down in Texas through the Red River Valley of the south. Tomorrow, stays in the lower Mississippi River Valley and back into Texas. And then as we get out to the middle of the week, we start to see a general thunderstorm risk for us. But let's take a look at when that precipitation gets there by going over to the European model. All right, we've watched out through this time period. Let's get there's Tuesday night, getting into Wednesday morning and afternoon. So you can see the lingering frontal boundary here. It moves across us Wednesday evening. That's our risk of thunderstorms here, getting into the overnight hours and eventually into Thursday morning. Things clear out. See that? Now, the next system, as we go into a drier end of the week, moves through the plains. See it there? I'll kind of rock back and forth throughout the day on Friday. As that system emerges, it's going to try to fall apart as best it can in the midsection of the country through Sunday. And then maybe bring us some scattered showers overnight on Sunday night into Monday morning. But what you've noticed is, and I've been able to go through this quickly, we're not talking about a lot of precipitation coming up over this week. And the last thing I want you to see is, let me take it back to Sunday at 7 p.m. Right here, this high pressure cell. As I move forward, that high pressure cell slides by Monday afternoon into the high northern plains, and then it pushes into the Midwest here. And that could give us an increased chance at precipitation next week, next Monday, Tuesday. But that's also going to be bringing in the coldest extent of this air, which I'll talk to you about in just a few moments here. So let's get some summary statistics here. How much rain are we talking about through this week? Well, we notice that our first chance comes in. There it is. Wednesday night, there's our chance for showers and possibly some storms. And then we see again there's through Sunday, early next week, right there, into Sunday night, Monday morning. Now that's out there pretty far. So over the next week, without much precip coming in, we're looking at a drier pattern. And even though you see drier in through this area, there will not be a lot of ag moving in that area because of some of the cooler weather that'll be in place. But I just want to show you the GFS model agrees with the drier pattern we just talked about here. Okay, let's come back to that pattern for week 2. Here's that high over low. So the flow goes around it and dips down like that and builds out here into a ridge in the west. This has several names. We call it the negative WPO pattern. That stands for West Pacific Oscillation. It is also the negative East Pacific Oscillation. That's what happens when they get stacked up like that. And it's the positive PNA. That stands for Pacific North American pattern. Basically, that was a bunch of weather jargon to tell you that it's going to go warm west, and this trough over here in the east is going to cool things down. And it's all due to this block you see right here. So, precipitation patterns first. Well, it's not going to be overly wet getting into week 2, which gets us out there from the 19th through the 26th. And the GFS model says the same thing. So, are we going over into a drier time period? Yes, which for many of us is needed to get this crop going in the Carolinas. But I just want to show you the impacts of that pattern. What you're looking at here is the correlation of that blocking pattern I just described to you and our temperatures. You see, if the West Pacific Oscillation was positive, well, it would be warmer across this area and colder in the west. But we have a negative West Pacific Oscillation, and as a result, we expect this pattern to be flipped from these colors. So what I mean by that is, well, let's just watch the temperatures. Let's do maximum temperatures first. So Monday's highs getting into Tuesday and Wednesday. Yep, you are the ones enjoying the nice weather here. Much colder. Look at this, getting all the way down to the panhandles here of Texas and Oklahoma. Much colder in the midsection of the country with highs struggling to get out of the 40s and 50s. There's Thursday. That's when the cold air finally gets to us. Getting into the weekend, there's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So we go into a cooler time period after a very warm and nice start to the week. How about those minimum temperatures? Well, we're going to see 50s to start the week. There's Tuesday getting into Wednesday. Thursday, the cooler air arrives. There we go for Friday. We could get some temperatures down here in the low 40s. Saturday and Sunday. Now, to put some, maybe a different way of looking at this, this is through the next 10 days where we expect to see a surface temperature below freezing. It's a frost map. So where you see gray, we could have a surface temperature below freezing. Like I said, this is an area where we were expecting to get a lot of field work done in April. And as a result of these, well, pretty far to the south, these penetrating frosts, we're going to get some cold air in place. And that high that slides in like this could possibly bring a frost even farther to the east here on the 22nd. Maybe what I'm looking at here is how far to the south that could get. First, let's go look at this. This is the probability of getting a temperature below freezing through April 21st. So I just want to show you, while it's not for us, there's a 50 to 60% chance we get frost in this area. All right, so that's out there on the morning of Wednesday the 21st. Now let's move on from there. Day 5 through 10, still have the cooler pattern of rust, but look at the warmth coming into the west. And as we look out there to day 10 through 15, the pattern begins to relax, but it's not as though we're going to have a hot finish to the month of April. All right. So is it echoed in the GFS? In the European model? It is, and that's what you're seeing here. And so the last thing I want to show you is when I expect the pattern to break. With the MJO coming out of phase 7, going into phase 8 late in the month and to start to start May, I do expect warmer conditions to arrive for that first week of May. So we are going to be spared of the really cold conditions here in the Carolinas, unlike what they're going to get in the Ohio Valley, in the Midwest, and in the plains. But the only benefit of that is we do have some drier conditions that are going to be coming through our area. And I expect it all to break once we get into that 4th week of the month of April. So I told you a lot to cover today. I appreciate you giving me your extra attention. But with that, we'll go ahead and wrap this one up. Thank you so much.